I, 30F, just found out my parents have been taking money from my trust fund that my late grandmother left me to financially support my brothers, 28M, lavish lifestyle. They've stolen over $175,000, and now they're saying I'm selfish for wanting it back because family helps family. I'm writing this from a lawyer's office waiting room, and I still can't believe this is my life right now. 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a normal, loving family. Now I've discovered a level of betrayal I never thought possible from the people who raised me, and everyone is acting like I'm the villain for being upset about it. I need to know if I'm crazy or if my reaction is justified. Essential background. My maternal grandmother passed away when I was 22 years old. She was an incredible woman. She'd immigrated to this country with nothing, built a successful business, and accumulated significant wealth over her lifetime. She was especially close to me because my mom worked a lot when I was growing up, and I spent countless afternoons and weekends at her house. She taught me about business, about saving money, about being independent and strong. When she died, I was devastated. At the reading of her will, I learned she'd left me a trust fund worth $250,000. The terms were clear. The money was mine, but it was held in trust until I turned 25, at which point I could access it. Until then, my parents were named as trustees with the authority to manage the investments, but the will explicitly stated the money was to be preserved for me and could only be used for my direct benefit, things like education expenses, medical emergencies, or a down payment on a first home. My parents explained all this to me at the time. They said they'd make sure the money was invested wisely and would be there for me when I turned 25. I trusted them completely. They're my parents. Why wouldn't I trust them? I need to tell you about my brother, Derek, to understand the full picture. Derek is 2 years younger than me, and we've always had a complicated relationship. Growing up, he was the golden child. Everything he did was celebrated. Every mistake was excused. I was the responsible one, the one who had to set an example, the one who got lectured if I brought home A B while Derek's C's were met with, he's just not an academic, he has other talents. Those other talents never really materialized into anything concrete. Derek bounced from interest to interest. He was going to be a musician, then a professional gamer, then a fitness influencer, then a crypto investor. Nothing ever stuck. He'd start something with huge enthusiasm, my parents would fund it, and then he'd lose interest and move on to the next thing. After high school, I went to college on a partial scholarship and worked 2 jobs to cover the rest. My parents helped where they could, but money was tight, or so they said. I graduated with about $30,000 in student loans. Derek, on the other hand, didn't go to college. He said it wasn't for him, and my parents supported that decision. Instead, he lived at home rent-free while pursuing various business ventures that never made any money. When I turned 25 3 years ago, I was excited to finally access my grandmother's trust fund. I'd been planning what to do with it, pay off my student loans, make a down payment on a small house, maybe put some in retirement savings. I'd been living frugally, sharing an apartment with roommates, driving an old car, being responsible with money just like my grandmother taught me. I called my parents to ask about accessing the trust. My dad said he'd look into it and get back to me. Weeks went by. I'd follow up and he'd say he was working on it, there was paperwork, it was complicated. Months passed. Every time I asked, there was a new excuse. The lawyer was busy, there were tax issues to sort out, the investments were in a position where selling would incur losses, so we should wait. I'll admit, I didn't push as hard as I should have. I trusted my parents, and I was busy with my career. I'm a civil engineer, and I'd just gotten a promotion. I was doing okay financially, even with my student loans, so I told myself the trust could wait a bit longer. Maybe it was better to leave it invested anyway. But it nagged at me. Over the past 3 years, I'd bring it up periodically, and my dad would always have a reason why now wasn't the right time to liquidate the investments. My mom would change the subject. I started to feel like something was off, but I couldn't put my finger on what. Meanwhile, Derek's lifestyle seemed to be improving dramatically. 3 years ago, he was living at home, unemployed, claiming to be working on a startup that never launched. Then suddenly, he moved into a nice apartment downtown. He got a luxury car. He started taking expensive vacations. I saw the photos on social media. Trips to Vegas, Miami, Europe. When I'd ask him how he was affording all this, he'd be vague. He'd say his investments were paying off, or he'd gotten lucky with some trades, or a business deal had come through. My parents would beam with pride and say Derek was finally finding his way. I was happy for him, I guess, though it seemed suspicious that his fortunes had changed so dramatically without any visible source of income. 4 weeks ago, I got engaged to my boyfriend of 3 years, Marcus. He's wonderful, stable, kind, hardworking. We started talking seriously about our future, about buying a house together, about finances. I told him about the trust fund and how I'd been waiting to access it. Marcus asked some questions about why it was taking so long, and when I explained all the excuses, he got concerned. He works in finance, and he said none of the reasons my dad had given made sense. Marcus suggested I consult with a lawyer, just to make sure everything was properly handled. I was resistant at first. These were my parents. I didn't want to treat them like criminals. But Marcus gently pointed out that it had been 3 years since I should have gotten access, and something clearly wasn't right. He offered to pay for the consultation so I wouldn't feel like I was wasting money if it turned out to be nothing. I agreed. We found a lawyer who specializes in trust and estate issues. I brought all the documentation I had, a copy of my grandmother's will, the trust documents, and the sparse communications I'd had with my dad about it. The lawyer listened to everything, looked over the documents, and said she'd need to do some investigating. She asked for my parents' contact information as the trustees and said she'd reach out to them officially. That's when everything exploded. The lawyer sent a formal letter to my parents requesting a full accounting of the trust, what the current balance was, how it had been invested, all transactions in and out. Within 24 hours of them receiving that letter, my dad called me furious. He demanded to know why I'd gotten a lawyer involved. He said I was treating them like criminals, that I was being ungrateful and suspicious. I told him I just wanted to access the money that was rightfully mine, and it had been 3 years of delays. He said I was being impatient and that he'd been managing the money responsibly. I asked him to just provide the accounting the lawyer requested so we could move forward. There was a long silence. Then he said we needed to talk in person. The tone of his voice made my blood run cold. Marcus came with me to my parents' house. I'm so grateful he did, because I don't know if I would have believed what happened next if he hadn't been there to witness it. My mom and dad sat us down in the living room. Both of them looked terrible. My mom had clearly been crying. My dad looked like he hadn't slept. My dad started talking. He said there was no easy way to tell me this, but the trust fund was mostly gone. My grandmother's $250,000, which should have grown over 8 years of investment, was down to about $68,000. Over $180,000 was just gone. I couldn't process it. I asked him what he meant by gone. Where did it go? Bad investments? Fraud? He wouldn't look at me. My mom was crying. Finally, my dad admitted that they'd been using the money. Using it? My money. The money my grandmother left specifically for me. I asked him what he'd used it for. He said a lot of things, some home repairs, helping Derek get on his feet, covering expenses when his business had a rough patch. I asked him how much had gone to Derek. He wouldn't give me a number. I pressed. He finally admitted that most of it, probably around $140,000, had gone to supporting Derek over the past few years. The room started spinning. Derek's apartment, his car, his vacations. His entire lifestyle for the past 3 years had been funded by my inheritance. My parents had stolen from me to give my brother a life of luxury, while I worked overtime, lived with roommates, and delayed my own life plans. I asked them how they could do this. How they could steal from their own daughter. My dad got defensive. He said they didn't steal anything, they were the trustees, which meant they had control of the money. I said the trust explicitly stated the money could only be used for my benefit. He said Derek is family, and helping him was indirectly helping me because it strengthened our family unit. I was screaming at this point. I asked if Derek even knew the money was coming from my trust. My mom said no. They told him they were helping him with their own savings. So not only had they stolen from me, but they'd lied to Derek too, making him think they were just generous parents instead of thieves stealing from their daughter. My dad said I needed to calm down and be reasonable. That yes, they'd made some mistakes in judgment, but they'd done it for good reasons. Derek had been struggling, and they didn't want to see their son fail. They said I was doing fine on my own, I had a good job, I was successful, I didn't really need the money. Derek needed it more. I asked if my grandmother would have wanted her money to go to Derek. My dad said that my grandmother loved all of us and would have wanted them to use their judgment to help the family. I said that was bullshit. If she'd wanted Derek to have money, she would have left him money. She left it to me, specifically, with specific instructions. Marcus jumped in at this point. He asked if they understood they'd committed a crime, that misappropriating trust funds is theft, fraud, and breach of fiduciary duty. My dad got angry and said Marcus should stay out of family business. Marcus said it stopped being just family business when they stole over $100,000. My mom started sobbing and saying she was sorry, that they'd meant well, that they'd planned to pay it back, but Derek kept needing more help, and they thought they'd have time to replenish the account before I really needed it. I asked her when they were planning to pay it back. When I was 30? 40? Never? I told them I was going to pursue legal action. My dad said if I did that, I'd destroy our family. That Derek would find out where his money came from, and it would devastate him. That I'd be tearing the family apart over money. I said they tore the family apart when they decided Derek's comfort was more important than my inheritance and their integrity. I left with Marcus. I've barely spoken to my parents since, except through my lawyer. The lawyer has confirmed that what they did was illegal. We can pursue criminal charges, civil suit, or both. She's recommended we start with a civil suit to recover as much money as possible, and that criminal charges would likely result in a plea deal where they'd have to make restitution. But here's where it gets even worse. My parents told Derek everything. I don't know exactly what version they told him, but he called me absolutely furious. He said I was trying to destroy our parents over money, that they'd sacrificed everything to help him succeed, and now I was going to send them to jail because I was greedy and jealous of his success. I tried to explain that his success was funded by my stolen inheritance. He said he didn't ask them to do that, so it wasn't his fault. I said he was right, it wasn't his fault, but he'd been living off my money, and he needed to understand that. He said what's done is done. The money was spent, and going after our elderly parents wasn't going to change that. I pointed out our parents are 58 and 56, hardly elderly, and that the money wasn't just spent. It went directly to fund his lifestyle. He said he'd pay me back if he could, but he doesn't have that kind of money. I asked about the car, the expensive apartment. He got defensive and said he'd made commitments based on what he thought was his parents' generosity, and he couldn't just undo his whole life. I suggested he could start by selling the car they bought him with my money. He said I was being vindictive and trying to punish him for our parents' choices. Then he said something that made me see red. You know what your problem is? You've always been jealous that Mom and Dad love me more. This isn't about the money. It's about you being bitter that I'm the favorite. I hung up on him. I haven't spoken to him since. But he's been posting on social media about family betrayal and how money ruins relationships. He's being deliberately vague, but people who know our family can read between the lines. I've gotten messages from cousins and family friends asking what's going on, saying they heard I'm suing my parents. My extended family is divided. Some of them are horrified by what my parents did and completely support me. My mom's sister, my Aunt Julie, called me crying and apologizing. She said she knew my grandmother would be heartbroken by this, and that I needed to do whatever was necessary to make it right. She offered to testify on my behalf, if it came to that. But other family members are saying I'm overreacting. My dad's brother, Uncle Tom, called and lectured me about forgiveness and family loyalty. He said that yes, my parents made mistakes, but taking them to court was extreme. He said I should work it out privately, maybe have them pay me back in installments, but destroying them financially and potentially sending them to jail was cruel. My dad's mother, my grandmother on that side, sent me a long email about how disappointed she is in me. She said my parents have always been good to me, and this is how I repay them. She said I'm being greedy and vindictive, and that my grandmother, the one who left me the trust, would be ashamed of how I'm acting. That last part particularly hurt because I think it's the opposite. I think my grandmother would be ashamed of my parents for stealing and ashamed of the family members defending them. Even some of my friends are questioning whether I'm handling this right. One friend said that while my parents were definitely wrong, suing them seems extreme and that maybe I should just write off the money and maintain the relationship. Another said that family is more important than money, and is this really the hill I want to die on? But here's the thing. This isn't about the money. I mean, yes, it's a lot of money, and I'm angry about losing it. But it's more about the betrayal. My parents looked me in the eye for 3 years and lied. They stole from me to fund my brother's lifestyle. They violated my grandmother's wishes and their fiduciary duty. They chose Derek over me in the most concrete way possible. And now they're not even really sorry. They're sorry they got caught. They're sorry there are consequences. But they still think they were justified because Derek needed the money more than I did. Never mind that I needed it too for student loans, for a house, for my future. Never mind that it was mine. My lawyer says we have a strong case. She's filed a civil suit seeking the full amount that should be in the trust, plus interest, plus legal fees. My parents have hired a lawyer who's trying to settle. They've offered to pay back $50,000 over 10 years. My lawyer says that's insulting. They stole $182,000, and they're offering $50,000 paid so slowly that with inflation it's worth even less. I told my lawyer to reject the settlement. She's also prepared to file a criminal complaint if they don't come back with a serious settlement offer. My parents' lawyer called mine and said that if we pursue criminal charges, my parents could face jail time, and did I really want to do that to them? Honestly, I don't know. I don't want to send my parents to jail. Despite everything, I still love them, and the thought of them behind bars makes me sick. But I also feel like they need to face real consequences. They committed a serious crime. They stole a huge amount of money from their own daughter. Should they just get away with that because we're related? Marcus says I need to do what's right for me and not worry about everyone else's opinions. He says my parents made their choices and now they have to live with the consequences. He says if I back down now, I'm teaching them that they can betray me without real repercussions. My therapist, yes, I'm in therapy now because this has been traumatic, says that I need to separate the guilt I feel from the reality of what happened. She says my parents are trying to make me feel guilty to avoid accountability, and that's manipulation. She says I didn't create this situation, they did, and I'm not responsible for the fallout. But the pressure is intense. My mom calls me crying, begging me to drop the lawsuit. She says they'll pay me back, just not all at once because they don't have it. She says please don't send them to jail. Please don't destroy their lives. She says she's sorry. She's so sorry and they made terrible mistakes, but they're still my parents and they love me. My dad is angrier. He's saying I'm ungrateful, that they raised me and sacrificed for me, and I'm going to destroy them over money. He's saying I'll regret this when they're gone, and I realize I threw away my family over dollars and cents. He's saying my grandmother would be disgusted by how materialistic and vindictive I've become. Derek has turned the whole thing into a social media narrative where he's the victim. He's posting about how hard he's worked to build his life, and now it's being torn apart by family drama. People who don't know the full story are commenting with support for him. He's positioned himself as the struggling younger sibling being attacked by a bitter, jealous older sister. It makes me want to scream. Last week, my parents showed up at my apartment. I didn't let them in, but we talked through the door. My dad said they'd refinance their house and could give me $85,000 right now if I drop the lawsuit and agree not to press criminal charges. I asked about the other $100,000 plus interest. He said that was all they could get, that asking for more would bankrupt them, leave them with nothing for retirement. I said they should have thought about that before they stole from me. My mom started crying so hard I could hear her through the door. She was saying, please, please, they do anything, just don't destroy them. I felt awful. I'm still angry, but hearing my mom break down like that was horrible. I called my lawyer and told her about the offer. She said it's still too low and doesn't include legal fees, interest, or any real consequences for what they did. She said if I accept, I'm basically saying stealing from me is fine as long as you eventually give back half of what you took. She's right, but I'm so tired. Yesterday, I had a call with extended family. My Aunt Julie organized it. It was me, Julie, Uncle Tom, my dad's sister, and a few cousins. It was supposed to be about finding a path forward. Instead, it turned into everyone pressuring me to accept my parents' offer and move on. Uncle Tom said $85,000 is a lot of money and I should be grateful they're willing to give me that much. One of my cousins said that family is more important than money and I'm prioritizing the wrong thing. Another said that yes, what my parents did was wrong, but they're suffering enough and I need to show mercy. Only Aunt Julie stood up for me. She said my parents committed a crime. Derek benefited from that crime, and I deserved full restitution plus consequences for them. I don't know what to do anymore. I'm exhausted. I'm angry. I'm sad. I miss my family, but I also can't look at them the same way. How do I have Thanksgiving dinner with people who stole from me? How do I watch Derek drive around in a car bought with my inheritance? How do I hug my mom when she lied to me for 3 years? But I also don't know if I can go through with criminal charges. The thought of my parents in jail makes me feel sick. Even after everything, they're still my parents. But if I don't hold them accountable, what message does that send? That they can steal from me as long as they cry and apologize afterward? Marcus says I need to decide what kind of relationship I want with my family going forward and let that guide my decision. If I want any relationship with them, I need to set a boundary that has teeth, full restitution, real consequences, acknowledgement of wrongdoing. If I'm willing to walk away from them entirely, then I should pursue every legal avenue available. The lawsuit is moving forward. My lawyer needs to know soon whether I want to also file criminal charges. My parents' lawyer has said they'll go up to $100,000 if I drop everything and sign an NDA. My lawyer says that's closer but still not enough, and the NDA clause is concerning. They want to pay me to stay quiet about what they did. Reddit, I need perspective. Am I wrong to pursue legal action against my parents for stealing from my trust fund? Should I accept their settlement offer and try to move forward? Am I being too harsh by considering criminal charges? Is everyone right that family is more important than money and I'm prioritizing the wrong thing? I genuinely don't know anymore. Part of me wants my family back, wants to believe we can heal from this. Part of me thinks the family I want back never really existed. It was just a lie built on favoritism and now theft. I don't know if I'm standing up for myself or if I'm being vindictive. I don't know if I'm doing what my grandmother would have wanted or if I'm dishonoring her memory by tearing the family apart. Please help me figure out what to do. I'm drowning in guilt and anger and confusion, and I don't trust my own judgment anymore. Edit. I'm overwhelmed by the responses. Thank you all for the reality check. Reading these comments has helped me see that I'm not crazy or greedy. What my parents did was serious, and consequences are appropriate. I've decided to reject the settlement offer and continue with the civil suit for full restitution. I'm also going to file a police report, though my lawyer says whether charges get filed is up to the DA. As for my family relationships, I'm accepting that they may be permanently damaged, and that's on my parents, not me. Thank you all for helping me see clearly.